Alrighty, hey everybody. We are here. Looks like we got it figured out. How's everybody doing? Welcome to TruthWire. I'm Fiorella here with Matt Weinglass today. How you doing, Matt?
Good. Love the playing music. We'll start trying to do that on Homeless Laugh. I love it. Gets us excited.
Yeah, exactly. It gets us in the mood. It used to be like a nightclub version. This one's a little bit more relaxed than the nightclub version we had back with the Convo couch. That it was a little bit like, like a nightclub in, I don't know, Ibiza or something. But yeah, we're here. We're ready to tackle the craziness of this world. I know you talked about some of the things we're going to talk about on your show. And I have a bit of a different perspective on the interview between the Iranian president Pezeshkian and Tucker Carlson, not for the same reasons Democrats or neocons are criticizing it, but for other reasons. So we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about, of course, Epstein. Pasta and I covered Epstein way back in the day. And with my brother Johnny, I mean, we really did some deep dives. If you go back to our videos, you all can see we did pretty well with those videos. And that's one of the things that I think we got a little bit, what is it like? We got placed in a little book of sorts ourselves for that. And it's really, I'm not surprised that we came out of this, Matt, with this from the Trump administration, because the Trump administration has been placed to sow chaos, to cause confusion, to make it seem like he's going to give something that he actually isn't. And he's the only guy that could really sell us out to Palantir, that could really sell out his base, that was so critical of the deep state, so critical of just the surveillance state in general, that really woke up and was able to see through the COVID stuff, see through the election stuff. And then, boom, you have Trump in there and they are buying into all this surveillance. So just off the bat, Matt, what are your feelings about how the Trump administration has essentially said that the FBI and DOJ did an investigation and found there's no client list?
Well, I think this might be a breaking point for MAGA right now. I don't know if Trump and his team fully thought this through. I think a lot of it might be based on that they've been spoiled. They have a base that is willing to accept anything. And this, we talk about 60, 70, 80 chess. I think we might be close to 10D right now of the excuses and just these fantasy storylines that Trump has some big secret plan ready to go, and then we just have to be patient. So I think the patience, I think they might have taken more advantage of that than they thought. At this point, we might be at that breaking point, because I think at some point people and the mags, we're seeing a lot of this happen where they're saying this is not, you're straight up lying to us right now. So I don't think they got their story straight on this one. I don't think they're as good as they think they are at pulling a fast one. I think that And you're absolutely right. I don't think there's anyone on the Democrats that could have pulled this off like Trump has up till this point. But I do believe we're at this breaking point. They are straight up lying to all of us right now about Epstein and so many other things. And I don't see how he can maneuver through this without losing at least, I would say, even up to half the base on this issue. Of course, we're still going to see the 10D chess conversations and the wishful thinking continue. And those people are just, that's just a unfortunate, that's a result of that capture. The same we see on the left with the Trump derangement syndrome or the vote blue no matter who. So there are obviously going to still be those captured, but I do really think, Fee, that we're at a breaking point. This is a significant moment. The way they presented this, there is no list moment to us this last day.
Yeah, no, I do think you're right. I think a lot of people were holding on to hope. I do think that there's still a segment of them, obviously, that we're going to go through that are experiencing massive amounts of copium and this is called cognitive dissonance in more psychological terms. Like this is like, I'd rather believe the lie. I'd rather stay in the matrix than actually, see it for what it is. And that happens often when we're confronted with disappointment, deception in things that we thought were possible. And, I've been pretty hard on MAGA because a lot of us knew that this would happen when it came to the JFK files, when it came to this sort of thing, because we've seen Donald Trump at work before. And there were people holding on to this hope. And I always say hold on to hope, but don't be dumb about it. Don't be like obtuse about the whole situation. And I think that's what we're seeing. So let's get started. Let's go into it right off the bat, just with some of what was said. Okay, let's just the facts. So what ended up happening was that, according to ABC News and according to all of mainstream media, right, they came up with this headline on July 7th. The DOJ and the FBI reviewed. They find that Jeffrey Epstein's client list did not exist, and they confirmed the suicide memo. There was also a video released that showed that there was nothing to see there, which is hilarious. And so let me just read the first couple of things here. A review ordered by President Donald Trump appointed the leadership of the Justice Department and the FBI found no evidence that notorious deceased financier Jeffrey Epstein kept a client list of associates whom he blackmailed or conspired with to victimize dozens of women, according to a new memo reviewed by ABC News. The department has also released hours of purported footage as part of its review, which officials say further confirms Epstein died by suicide while in custody in his jail cell in Manhattan in 2019, contradicting, quote, conspiracy theories long embraced or spread by allies of President Trump and others. So, okay, so I want to, we're going to talk about what Pam Bondi said, but I want to highlight this part right here, conspiracy theories, because the MAGA folk, right, have notoriously been called conspiracy theorists. Anybody questioning the status quo establishment narrative in the last, especially 5 years, right, has been called a conspiracy theorist. By Trump doing this, he is essentially taking the side, if we're going to talk about the sides of the Democratic establishment, or in general, let's be honest, of the establishment in general. Okay, he's taking the side that has been maligning a huge sector of the MAGA contingent. And he is essentially saying, yes, you all believed in conspiracy theories, and therefore you're all just completely a bunch of, delusional conspiracy theorists. There's nothing to see here. He is gaslighting the supporters who got him to where he is. He essentially is going against everything he stood for. This is why this is such a big deal here, because it's not just the fact that, okay, Epstein a sex trafficker, like protecting pedophiles. This is very, very big stuff here. But it's also the personal betrayal that Trump has unleashed against the very people that believed in him and thought that he was fighting these evil demonic forces. This is how they look at it. And now, not only is he gaslighting them, he is completely just turning the world upside down and saying that all along the things that he said, the things that Pam Bondi said, the things that all of these paid influencers that were waving their binders said is now suddenly conspiracy theories, and that the Democrats, the Hillary Clintons, the establishment of the world were entirely right, and you should just move on and forget about it.
It's unbelievable. And again, I don't think this team did not fully think this through. They think that these little tiny, deflections, and we looked into it. Here we are. That's it. Stop. Why are you guys so obsessed with this horrible person again? And we talk about this a lot. This wiring of people that there's this like bad apple, and he already killed himself. So what's the problem? It's over. Let's stop obsessing with him. The other types of gaslighting they're doing is with the actual tapes themselves, saying, you know what? Why do you want to see these tapes? This is child, bleep. We're not supposed to. That's illegal anyway. So what do you guys want to see? Something that we're not even legally allowed to show you, and the guy killed himself. Here's the tape. Nothing happened in the cell. He just killed himself. So they didn't think that through either. That tape, they should never have released that, by the way. That is more incriminating. The fact that not just the 1 minute missing, the fact that they couldn't get the right angle of where his cell actually was. We looked at that a little closely and saw that that's not even the right part of the jail cell area. So they're giving you the wrong footage from the wrong area with a minute missing and deflecting us on all sorts of ways. And when you talk about him taking the stance now of the Democratic establishment machine, the irony here is now, of course, the machine itself is moving closer to not to full out conspiracy theory, but they're moving away from that position. They're saying, what is Trump up to here? We're curious. We're asking questions. What are you trying to protect? And that narrative, again, I don't think Trump thought this through at all, because he should know better that the establishment has been painting him as Emperor Trump, right? King Trump. This is all these rallies are about stop king, no kings. So he knows that's the narrative going at him. So of course they're going to maneuver there. They don't want to align with him publicly on this. So they're going to change their stance and say Trump independently, he's the unique emperor king that has something personally to hide here. He's the one that's protecting himself. And that's why we're not seeing it. So they're moving away from that position. And now he's alone there with however many MAGAs are left with him, trying to pretend he's up to something incredibly genius, which he's not. And that's where you are. And you got Pam Bondi, you got all these characters. They've all misstepped here. All of them. Nobody's played this right. I mean, obviously you got Kash Patel, you got Dan Bongino. Every one of these people have slipped up in this. So I don't think, again, I think they have a bad game plan moving forward. They thought that they could get through this. I think this is absolutely a breaking point here. And I think some people are going to be fired. I think Pam Bondi is out of here. She's done by the end of the month. That's definitely happening. And then I don't know where MAGA goes from here. But yes, we can see that the mainstream is moving into asking questions, which is such a bizarre thing to see at this point, because it does feel like bizarro world right now.
Yeah, that's a good point about them not thinking it through, because there are so many layers to this as to I think it's, as you said, in a way, I think it's causing a stir within the Democrats themselves, within like a lot of people who aren't even MAGA. I think a lot of people are questioning, like, what's going on here? What exactly is happening? Jayme, we can go ahead and pull up that funny video, because anybody who has been following this a little bit, or who actually the majority of the world that I know of, like non-political people, literally do not believe the story. That's the thing. Like, unless you're some paid MAGA propagandists, you're not really buying this. Okay. It is very difficult, or some establishment person that believes everything the news says is real, right? You're not buying this. It's so funny. I've seen so many memes online, right? And you can just play. It's kind of funny. Because I think we need a little bit of comic relief in this, right? Like, Jeffrey Epstein had no client list, died by suicide. DOJ and FBI conclude.
You lying? Why you always lying? Oh my God. Stop fucking lying. Always lying
So,
to me. You're lying so much.
They're lying to you. And that's the thing. Like, everybody knows this is a lie. Even when Jeffrey Epstein died, when he was quote unquote, suicided, people were like, they didn't buy the story. And now, after everything that's happened, of course, they're also not buying the story. So let's get to it, because Pam Bondi, right? She addressed the Epstein memo. She got questioned and grilled by journalists who were asking about the DOJ and the FBI report. And one of them said, your memo released yesterday on Jeffrey Epstein left some lingering mysteries. One of the biggest ones is whether he ever worked for an American or foreign intelligence agency. So could you resolve whether or not he did? And also, could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape? And as you said, Matt, I think that was worse. And Trump went at the guy. So we can read it, but let's just watch it. And then Matt, you can you can comment on that, because I want to get your take on Trump's reaction here. I mean, I'm not even a MAGA, and I'm enraged at how he's reacting about this. Let's listen.
Your memo and release yesterday on Jeffrey Epstein, it left some lingering mysteries. One of the biggest ones is whether he ever worked for a American or foreign intelligence agency. The former labor secretary, who was Miami U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta, he allegedly said that he did work for an intelligence agency. So could you resolve whether or not he did? And also, could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape on the night of Saturday?
Yeah, sure.
Could I just interrupt for 1 second? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this, where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration, but you go ahead.
Sure. First, to back up on that, in February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I said, I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day. To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. And the minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively the video was not conclusive, but the evidence prior to it was showing he committed suicide. And what was on that, there was a minute that was off the counter. And what we learned from Bureau of Prisons was every night, they redo that video. It's old, from like 1999. So every night the video is reset, and every night should have the same minute missing. So we're looking for that video to release that as well, showing that a minute is missing every night. And that's it on Epstein.
So, Matt, I just, go ahead. I want your thoughts on that. And I've never heard of a minute missing in this way. I don't know. I'm confused about that.
So this is so bad. This is so embarrassing. This is so disgusting on so many levels. I'm going to start with this. I believe they rehearsed this, and that's what makes it even more ridiculous that they actually planned this out, and it was just the worst plan possible. Trump was like, I'll interrupt. I'll give a little thing about why are we even talking about this, and then you can do your little explanation about what you said on Fox and the 1 minute and the child porn, which why would anyone want to see that? Like, okay, so nobody wants it. By the way, nobody wants to see that. So this idea that people want to see, it's ridiculous. It's such a gaslighting move. But starting with the interruption, which I do think was totally planned by Trump, the deflection of why are we still talking about this guy? Come on, guys, we're done with this. This guy. It's over. All right. We have all these other things. We can't do more than one thing at once, right? It's like we only do one thing at a time, and we're dealing with Texas right now, so it's just deflection. But when Pam Bondi starts talking and going through this excuse after excuse, it really shows you again. This was not planned well at all. I mean, you had like weeks since Dan Bongino and Kash Patel told us they're working on the footage, they're getting it ready, and even that was like red flag territory. We're just like, why are you talking to us about some post-production thing going on like this is Hollywood? Because that's what you're basically telling us. We have this footage, we're working on it, we're fine-tuning it for you. We want it to be perfectly flawless when it gets to you. And so that's weird on its own. And that was told to us weeks ago. So whoever's this editor they hired going through this footage, they decided, yeah, we're ready to go. Let's get this out. We still have this 1 minute issue. You'll have to deal with that. But then just tell them we're still working on that. So none of that is being answered. It looks totally, this again, not planned at all well. And going back to the reporter's question, which started this off, the question was, is he an agent with somewhere? No, we don't have that information. We'll get back to you on that. So the whole idea that you're going to try and deflect this for your base, for the media, for anybody watching, and that they're going to buy this. It's such a small percentage of people that are going to buy this right now. But I think that I think people are going to be fired. I think that Trump's going to have to figure out another distraction or another way to get some of his base back. But I think this moment, again, I'll say that this is going to be a definitive moment in the downfall of Trump's second term and the MAGA movement. This will be the definitive moment right here.
And I actually think that is the plan from the establishment. And I think that the reason we're seeing this is because this is what they want. You know, a loss of a faith in somebody like Trump, that initially he got people back into the fold, and now there's a little bit of a loss of faith and the push back towards the Democrats. And so we're going back in that back and forth, and it's also a discrediting of his entire following, his entire group of supporters, done by the knife was placed by the person that should have been the one taking the lead to move forward. This is one of the reasons why people thought they voted for Trump, and he has failed in pretty much almost all of them. So I want to go back to now, Jayme, to what Pam Bondi said on February 21st when she told everybody that the client list was sitting on Trump's desk or on her desk, and it was awaiting review, and that Donald Trump had ordered this. And if you recall, during that time, there was a lot of people that were saying, I saw the client list. It's coming. Oh my God, it's going to be crazy. And now where are all these people? What happened to this list that people said they saw, right? So if we can go ahead and pull that tweet up, and we'll play this video, Jayme, because I want to kind of see what was said before and compare it to what is being said now. And like her responses today, of course, are immediately after was to essentially say that there's nothing there, and Kash Patel and her did this whole cover up that a lot of people are calling it a cover up, and that's exactly what it is. It's not some sort of conspiracy theory. It's the reality of actually what is. And so let's just go ahead and listen to this It's this other clip here, and let's see what what we can make sense out of this. And this has been long planned, and I just want to say that this has been long in the planning.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that. I'm reviewing JFK files, MLK files. That's all in the process of being reviewed because that was done at the directive of the president from all of these agencies.
So have you seen anything that you said, oh my gosh?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, we'll check back with you. The DOJ may be releasing.
Okay. Really quick, if you go down the second one, Jayme, I think we have this in the file, but quickly, I just want to show you the second tweet under that. If you guys recall, this is what I was talking about. It's the influencers, right, that were handed these Epstein files, and they were like waving them like, oh, look, we're doing it. We're uncovering the deep state. We're going to go after these, quote, pedos. We're going to go after these people, these sex traffickers, these, criminals that are attacking our children. This was the huge thing in MAGA. This is what MAGA was going to do. This is what Trump was going to do. And I had to point that out, right? Like, so was she lying then, Matt? I think she seemed hesitant, and she seemed like she didn't want to give up too much information. She honestly seemed very insecure in her answer there. So I feel like she knew that wasn't happening then. What do you think?
I think there is a good chance that there might have been some negotiation going on in this time in between of what we're able to do, what we're not able to do. I actually fully think that it would have obviously been in all of their best interest to have something of substance to show us. So I do think they were negotiating this, but who are they negotiating with? I think that's a question. And this is what we know the mainstream will never answer, because they think they want to present the story that Trump is independently this Emperor Trump is independently making these decisions. He's not. The negotiation is happening with their handlers, i.e. Israel handlers, the Zionist faction, which is basically the entire team behind the team. So this is the negotiation. So if anything was going on there, as far as like what you noticed, and I noticed it too, that there is some effort there that just basically collapsed. This effort of, can we give them something? And it turns out their handlers said, no, you're not going to give them anything. We are going to protect this so hard because it's so large. And what the American people don't understand, and this is a reality that we have to kind of accept, that no matter how much we shout about human trafficking, child sex trafficking, all of this stuff is it's so big that when we even try to have a conversation, the American people don't really want to have that conversation. We've seen this time and time again. Yeah, the movie, the Sound of Freedom. Everybody's don't want to see that movie. It's a QAnon movie. So even having this discussion, it's unfortunate that not enough people are upset about this, and they're still stuck in their tribes, playing this game of, oh, Trump's trying to protect himself. It's much bigger than that. And unfortunately, I don't think we're going to ever get to the bottom of this ever. And I think you're right, Fee, that this team was put in place to be ultimately the fall guy for all of this, wishful thinking that something of justice was going to happen. And let me throw in one more thing. Caroline Leavitt is also 100% guilty of how she's spinning this as well when she's getting these questions. And the biggest problem is that you don't have anybody going to jail for anything. This is a lesson we have to teach people in the MAGAs that don't understand this, that if you don't see anybody in power going to jail, then nobody's actually getting justice. You can punch down all you want, and that's what Caroline Leavitt's saying. She goes, look, we're holding people accountable. Look at all the people Trump is locked up. Yeah, people down here with no power. You never see anybody in positions of power going to jail ever. We learned that in the Obama days. So that we just need more people to start understanding that they are all in on it when no one goes to jail. So that's the clear sign right there. And I unfortunately think that we're going to continue in that direction until enough people wake up and say, we're not falling for this anymore. You have not arrested anybody in power. The only person sitting in jail, and I'll just throw this in, Ghislaine Maxwell is sitting in jail for now apparently a crime that she didn't even commit, because if there's no list, what are you in jail for? What were you conspiracy to do if there was no list? So there's that as well. But so this whole thing's a big mess. I do think people need to start understanding that they're all in on it, and it's going. The plan is going the way it's supposed to go. And unfortunately, there are going to be some people getting fired, and good riddance. They need to get fired, but it's going to be business as usual after this.
Yeah, and again, people, how do you expect Trump, who has been part of the elite predator class, the billionaire class, who is full of Zionist influence, not just in his cabinet, but in his life and his family? How do you expect someone like that to hold anyone of power accountable when these are his friends, these are his contacts, and this issue, as you said, is just so large, and it involves extremely powerful people that have so much influence in the international affairs of the world, essentially, not just in the United States, but I would say at least in the collective West. So you can't, this is why you cannot entrust politicians to save you. This is why you can't entrust, especially politicians who are coming from, a very, very privileged background with the contacts that they have. And it goes beyond, Trump covering for himself. It goes to the fact that these are the shared interests of the predator class, and they're not going to go against each other. This is something we have to learn. We're back into understanding what classes, what the difference in classes. It doesn't matter if you're well off or not. You're still not part of this class, and they are going to protect each other in a way. And you have a lot of Americans cheering for these people to save them, and they very well don't understand that by doing this, they're losing their own power and their own ability to see how just they're being moved like pieces on a chessboard, essentially. And so I want to go into the copium aspect, not just because it's ridiculously funny and also sad at the same time, but because people need to understand that there are influencers, there's, YouTubers, whatever, people on social media that are paid to kind of continue this mindset that there's some 20D chess move coming. And one of those people who sometimes gets things right, but most of the time it's for a specific, purpose, is Alex Jones. And Alex Jones put out this video where he says, exclusive, Judge Joe Brown believes that Trump is using the Epstein files to blackmail the deep state to surrender. So we're back on Trump has a plan. Trust the plan. Don't question, just trust the plan. Trump is now Jesus. He's going to figure it out for us. This mindset is it's enslavement, really. That's what it is. It keeps you from thinking independently and questioning what your very own eyes and ears are really hearing and seeing. So let's listen to what was said in this little clip here.
Trump has taken control. He didn't do it. They're shutting it down from everything I've seen. He is taking control of the FBI CIA blackmail file. And now I suddenly see this deep state more and more rolling over. People say, well, that's very immoral to do. The argument would be it's too damaging to bring this act and bring down the whole government. I'm not endorsing that, but the best approximation I've got is they get the files, they raid the FBI. The FBI raids the FBI 5 months ago. When they hid the files in New York, they make the guy resign that was covering it up, and Comey's daughter's still there. They then load the gun, cock the gun, point at the deep state's head, and now suddenly the NATO, everybody's kissing Trump's butt, and it looks like Trump is now in control of the file, and obviously they're not going to read in the FBI. It's the CIA and Ratcliffe doing it. The best approximation I've got, and it is speculation, but I got a lot of points, is that Trump has decided to just use the file against them. What do you think, Judge?
I think you're right on point with that. I think a great deal of what happened with Smith and Millargo when the FBI raided it some years ago, and this thing that clearly they had no standing to go against about him supposedly having classified confidential documents, when, as we have discussed, the President of the United States under the Constitution as chief diplomat and commander-in-chief has been held to have absolutely unquestionable authority as to what he declares either confidential and secret or decides to declare is not such. So my sneaking suspicion is that a lot of what he refused to turn over to the archivist, which was unconstitutional in terms of what it was trying to put in place through statutory override of constitutional authority, which is wrong, is that there was wrongdoing that if he turned it over to the archivist was going to be turned over to the people who were recorded doing wrong, and they would destroy it. So we had an obligation to the people to maintain control of that, which he did. And I see absolutely nothing wrong with it. And it's been dropped. It's dead. It's not fair, but he knows that. And I have a sneaking suspicion that when the investigations are completed and they're solid, we're going to start seeing something come out of it.
Matt, okay, so Donald Trump is obviously not in control, and we've said this. Like, that's not excusing him as a person or as a leader, but obviously we know that the United States is run by the intelligence military apparatus. However, it seems to be this idea that because of that, then that means that Trump is fighting the deep state in another way. He's got to do this to get that sort of mindset. What do you make of that mindset?
Alex Jones, I think he's going through a mental breakdown right now. I saw another video of him in his car, I think when the news just broke, and he was basically in tears. And he's not understanding, like, basically everything that he's worked for. And, like, we have to give him credit where credit's due. He's been on the forefront of, uncovering a lot of stuff that we were that years ago was considered conspiracy theorists. And he got information out to people. He's a lot of the stuff a lot of work he's done has been on this type of issue on we talk about, human trafficking, child sex trafficking. It's very important to him. So when he sees this not go the way it was supposed to go, I think it's and I'm glad at least he said it's just speculation. But anybody that's watching this and watching Judge Joe Brown on the show, you're basically, this is not news anymore. It's not an investigation. It's just gossip from people who are trying to hold on to something. And it's actually kind of sad to watch. But I think a lot of people are understanding that there is absolutely no way that Trump is blackmailing the people that he's supposed to expose. That's not a thing. And even if it was, another question would need to be asked. And I think if somebody closer to Alex Jones could ask him, do you if that was even possible to be true, are you saying you support something like this? That is, where do you draw the line there? When you start to say that you can break the law in order to protect something, how far does that go? So now you're okay with that. This is the type of stuff the Democrats were doing with, we're not going to give the Hunter Biden laptop story to the people. We're going to rig this. We're going to rig that for the greater good. So you're now championing that Trump. And again, it's a delusional idea, but even if it was true, you're telling your audience that you're okay with our president committing crimes in order to protect us. that's the thing. So how far does that go? That would be my next question, even if it's true. But it's not. There's no possible way that Trump can be maneuvering this right now. He's clearly under control of his handlers. We've seen it since he got the $100 million from the Zionist family that gave him the $100 million and well beyond there. And you see his behavior with Netanyahu. At every turn, he's being handled, and he can't really do much about it at all. And that's my best assessment of him, is he might mean well, but he ain't able to do anything. And that's the most credit I'll give the guy. But there is absolutely no way that there's some mastermind double, triple blackmail going on to get any sort of justice to come out of this. And it's unfortunate, but I do think Alex Jones is in the middle of a mental breakdown. So I'll give him that.
He does seem more affected than others who are clearly just grifting. And I point that out because I want to pull up Jayme David Icke's tweet, because David Icke has gone after these people for the entire time. But he says, confirmation that Epstein was a Mossad operative, because here is Ben Shapiro saying, let's just go ahead and listen to what Ben Shapiro says. Let's just listen to it.
We now have the answers. And the problem is this: people who never hedged their bets, people who never at any point suggested to you that they don't have data to back up the speculation, that the speculation was in and of itself the conclusion, that if you speculate without evidence, that amounts to an actual conclusion to an investigation, they're going to be very upset today, because it turns out that the DOJ and the FBI have concluded that Epstein didn't have a client list and died by suicide, according to a memo detailing the findings obtained by Axios. Now, again, does this put to bed like all inquiries? Of course not. People can continue to speculate as much as they want. And I think there's still open questions here regarding how did Epstein make his money? But that's a very serious open question. And the speculation for a long time was he made his money from blackmail. But the DOJ and the FBI, again, run by people like Dan Bongino and Kash Patel and Pam Bondi, are telling you, I'm not telling you, they're telling you, people who are members of the Trump administration, people you elected and put into these positions to get you the truth on this matter, are telling you that he didn't, in fact, he was not murdered. He did not keep a client list, and he did not blackmail powerful figures. Okay, right? That is the thing that they are saying, not I. They are saying this. If you're willing to throw that over and claim they're lying, then I'd like to see you present your evidence that they are in fact lying, because I know Dan. I don't think that Dan Bongino is lying to me. I know Kash Patel a little bit. I don't think Kash Patel is lying to me. I don't think these people are lying to me, which means that if somebody else continues to claim that they're lying, they ought to provide their evidence at this point. And now is the point at which the facts on the ground have changed. And so either you ought to shift your opinion based on the facts that have now emerged, or you ought to acknowledge that this was never a fact-based inquiry in the first place.
It's peak irony that he's saying you have to shift your opinion based on the facts that have emerged, while he's literally shifting his opinion because it literally benefits him to do so. And he's literally gaslighting people as well and turning it around. The mental gymnastics has me exhausted. I mean, I'm exhausted from what he just did here. Basically saying you can't question these people because these are people in power. So, whatever you thought before, you can't question it. Otherwise, where's your evidence? Where's your evidence? Where's your evidence? And obviously, none of us are going to have a smoking gun evidence, but everything else that has gone into this for years now, all the people that were witnesses, all the testimonies that were given, the fact that Ghislaine Maxwell, as we pointed out earlier, is in jail for what now?
Yeah. And
the fact that Jeffrey Epstein was in jail for absolutely no reason at all. I mean, it's just, you literally, when someone like Ben Shapiro says, believe this, that might incline you to do the opposite, I think.
Yeah, and obviously Ben Shapiro's not going to. None of what he's been doing these last several years are going to age well at all with his legacy. I think we kind of all recognize that, but just that he's doubling down on this diatribe about trust your overlords, trust your leaders. I mean, he sounds like the Democratic Party, vote blue no matter who's. Like, you trust, these are the people you voted for. You trust them. I trust them. I really trust them. You have to, and it's just like, dude, man, what are you doing? Why? Who's watching? By the way, who's watching you anymore at this point? That's what I want to know. No, I think that, you know, we need more people to stand up right now and say the guy we voted for is not doing the thing, and the people that were part of this team, the people that were put into these positions, whether it's Kash Patel, whether it's Dan Bongino or Pam Bondi or any of these people, they are all in on this this sabotage of the American people. They're all guilty, and we don't. This is okay. So this is the thing about independent media. If you still consider yourself part of independent media, no matter who you're taking money from, but let's say you assume that you are part of this independent media, which we exist because we are challenging the institutional media, which are propagandists, and they work on behalf of their donors, so, and their advertisers. So what we're doing here in this space is the job is to challenge people in power. So Ben Shapiro, his entire messaging of it's up to, the onus is on you to prove 100% to me that these people are lying. And if you can't do that, they're 100% being honest. That's not journalism. Sorry. Our job is to be skeptical of power until they prove us otherwise. The onus is on them to prove they weren't lying. That's the job. And if Ben Shapiro hasn't figured that out by now, or maybe he thought he maybe knew that at one point, he's completely, like you said, completely flipped. It's agonizing to watch. It won't age well historically. And I think enough people that have turned off their CNNs and MSNBCs and Fox News, they believe what I'm saying. That's why they watch us, whatever their choice of outlet to watch, whatever their go-to is. That's the whole point. That's why you're watching YouTube and Rumble and you're on Twitter. That's why. Yeah. So there's no way that sentiment can survive. And again, who's watching this guy anyway? I don't understand it.
Yeah, I mean, what's the point of watching independent media if you're just going to be more establishment than the mainstream? That's it right there. I mean, there's nothing else to say on that. So the next thing, Jayme, we can go to what Mike Lee's tweet. We can just skip to that one because it's pretty funny. So Benny Johnson is one of the guys we always go after, at least Pasta and I, because he's one of these people that is a paid, like, actual propagandist. And so he actually talked about, the recently released Epstein security footage is missing a full minute. And this is what I mean. This is like what you said earlier. They didn't think this through. This makes it worse. And then you have Mike Lee quote tweeting that and saying nothing to see here. Literally, someone made sure of it. And then later on his second tweet, he has, I have full faith in Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, and Pam Bondi, and no faith in the Biden administration. What does Joe Biden have to do? I mean, they take every opportunity to throw in Joe Biden to kind of say, look, have faith in the Trump administration because Joe Biden. That is literally no different than the Biden administration or the Democrats saying, hey, you don't want Trump, do you? Look at how Donald Trump is. It's the same exact thing. And MAGA needs to realize that the Republican people in charge right now are literally the same as the Democrats, just with a few slight, veneers of differences when it comes to social issues and all of that. But at the end of the day, they're using the same mentality and the same excuses. And, we don't need to see it because we know that this is bullshit. We know that this is, of course, there's so much to see here. Nobody's buying this. I mean, except the people that don't have the ability to accept the truth, because the truth is they got played, and it's just a very difficult thing to accept. And the reality that I want to point out to, if we go to the next thing, Jayme, is this meme here, right? Because Donald Trump was supposed to end the Ukraine war in 24 hours. Of course, he wasn't going to do that. But now we're going to go into the next section soon. He's doing worse than that. He's going to continue funding Ukraine. He is completely given up or completely sold out on the Epstein files. He's driving up the deficit. This was big for MAGA, right? We're gonna decrease the deficit. No, it's gone huge. The big beautiful bill, that's just another layer of the deficit. And then it says, I also pedoed kids on Epstein Island. So now even people are starting to say, well, what's going on with Trump? Because this is just so far from what he stood for. And I think that you're right. This is a definitive moment for MAGA, but I think it's also a definitive moment in politics in general, and how people are seeing how people are getting played. And you know, until the next thing happens where they're falling back on the next savior, because like I said, that was my issue with the Zoran Mamdani, was this whole idea that now we're going to support Democrats because they say a few nice things. It's the same mentality here. And this next meme I thought was funny because it says, FBI monitoring my activity, my VPN location set to Epstein's Island so they no longer care what I do. I mean, really, we're all being watched. We're being surveilled at every single turn. And yet Epstein Island, which had some weird shit there. I mean, buildings, things, the people involved, and there's scary pictures and all of this stuff. And suddenly there's nothing to see there. Forget about it. That's the thing. They're telling you to forget about it, right? Forget about it. Forget like you forgot about the war in Iraq, 9/11, COVID, the elections, all of these things, you know, the Russiagate scandal, how they got you to suckered into the Russia-Ukraine war, how they're selling you on Iran right now and everything else. Forget about every single thing that the government has lied to you about. Just put it aside and continue buying that politicians are going to be the ones, and that the FBI and the DOJ are going to be the ones to investigate themselves and expose themselves. It's complete lunacy what we're seeing. And I don't know anything else you want to say on this, Matt, before we move on.
Well, I'll just piggyback on the last thing you said, because I think this is important, and our viewers should know this already, but sometimes it needs to be said, that the memory holding operation, it's real, and people that fall for that, we have to wake people up and remember that every time something breaks, we have to look at the details of that story. And we have to provide historical context and remind people, even though they don't want to have these conversations. You just said that people don't want to talk about, oh, COVID's over. That was a long time ago. And we don't really need to know the history of our horrible, nefarious behavior in the Middle East. All we need to know is that Iran is a problem right now. Never mind all the previous tapes of Netanyahu telling us that Iran is 2 weeks away from nuclear capability. So these are the moments we have to remind people that keep your lists. Like, they're going to tell us there's no Epstein list. Well, guess what? We can make our own list. We should be always bringing out our own lists and reciting the bullet points and reminding people the historical context, reminding them, that there is a history in Ukraine before February of 2022, and just training people to always think with that part of their brain, that critical thinking part, where historical context matters, and it gives us a lot more information and informs our ability to respond to what's happening right now. And so this stuff, we can't let it go away. We have to keep talking about it. And I think that's why we have to continue having these conversations.
No, yeah. I mean, make your own list. If that's a good idea. If you start making lists, I think you'll find that the list just gets longer and longer and longer. And before you know it, you'll just realize, oh, wait a minute, there's a lot of things that aren't adding up here. So
we should each have a list of the last. So you have Biden's administration, and now you have Trump's early administration. Everybody should have a list of everything the Democrats did in those 4 years, like just that, because you can't go for. I mean, we don't have all the time in the world to write novels on this stuff, but just everything they did to screw us and screw their base, which set the tone, set the pavement for Trump. for his second term, and then make a list of everything that's happened since his inauguration. And you guys keep those lists, and you can whip them out when you're in conversations with people and remind them. Say, hey, what about this? What about this? There's so many things that it's hard to remember all in your head, but just write it down, pull it out. It's a way to keep them in check, and keep people around you in check too, who conveniently forget these things.
No, 100%. I mean, that should be the normal thing we should all be doing, I think. So one of the things that is on my list, Matt, and I'm sure maybe on yours, it's a Russia-Ukraine war. We're more than 3 years in to this war. The U.S. was supposed to, under the Trump administration, end this war in 24 hours. We knew that wasn't going to happen, but we thought maybe. Donald Trump is serious. He has to deliver something to his base. And, Russia, even right now, continues waiting for Ukraine to set the next date for their negotiations. But what's happening is the United States and the Trump administration are basically saying, you know what? We're going to send more weapons to Ukraine. So even on that, the Trump administration is backing away from one of the reasons some people were pushing Trump was maybe with Trump, we can end this war because the Biden administration is very anti-Russia, right? The Democrats have notoriously been anti-Russia. They started Russiagate, Hillary Clinton. You have Victoria Nuland, Jeffrey Pyatt, all these people. It goes back to the majority of the Democrats. You had some Republicans there in 2014. But because it goes back to the Democrats, you had people hope maybe Republicans would be different. You had a lot of Russians and Russian analysts thinking that Trump was different. And, as someone in Russia, this is primarily, this was the sentiment that at least with the Trump administration, we're having conversations, that at least with the Trump administration, their conservative values align with our conservative values, that all of this, this is going well. And then, of course, the United States, as usual, pulls back on what it actually promised to deliver and delivers nothing. And here we have Donald Trump admitting, and this is from the AP, Trump, first of all, he was caught off guard by the Pentagon's supposedly abrupt move to pause Ukraine weapons deliveries. And Donald Trump has also made the decision to provide more defensive weapons to Ukraine, saying that he expressed frustration, this privately, with Pentagon officials for announcing a pause in some deliveries last week, a move that he felt wasn't properly coordinated with the White House, according to 3 people familiar with the matter, whatever that means. The Pentagon, which announced last week that it would hold back some air defense missiles, precision-guided artillery, and other weapons pledged to Ukraine because of what U.S. officials said were concerns that American stockpiles were in short supply. Trump said Monday that the U.S. will have to send more weapons to Ukraine, effectively reversing the move. So I want to ask you a couple of things, Matt. Do you think U.S. stockpiles are actually in shortage? Do you actually think that that's a valid concern? Because there were a lot of people out there saying, yeah, the U.S. can't really continue giving money to Ukraine because we don't have giving weapons to Ukraine because we don't even have the weapons. We're short ourselves. And now we're trying to push wars all over the Middle East and perhaps with China, right? So do you think that's actually a real, genuine concern?
I think so. I think that otherwise, I'm not even understanding why the Pentagon would even want to halt. They have no other reason to unless they are literally low in capability of being able to even do it at all. So I do think that should be a concern. And I think that, Trump's response really just goes to show you that he wants them to solve this problem and get it, just figure it out and let's keep it moving. And so that type of reveal, I think the reveal here is that we are getting to the place where it's not sustainable anymore. We've talked about this from the beginning, that this is not sustainable. It doesn't matter if it's Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or Trump. At some point, we cannot continue to elevate Ukraine to a point where they're not going to win. We know this. Russia is going to play the long game until we have no ability to help them anymore. That's going to be it. So we might be at that point now. Now, why doesn't Trump understand this before he publicly says, no, this is not okay, keep it going? He should be anticipating this moment coming, and he should try and get back. I don't know why he's not trying to get back to the place of the thing he ran on, which, like you said, the 24 hours, we're going to end this. The way you end this, and I have to tell people all the time because they think, oh, it's all complicated and it's a lot of work. No, just stop sending weapons, stop sending money. See what happens. Because I'll tell you this, you won't be able to go rounding up innocent people in Ukraine and forcing them to go die on the battlefield they don't want to go to. You're not going to be able to do that anymore if they don't have the artillery to provide. They're just not going to be able to do it. And so that's how you save Ukrainians. If you really want to be about Ukraine, you say, stop this, stop it now. But yes, as far as the stockpiles go, yes, I think we might be at the tail end here. And that's what we're witnessing in real time here.
Yeah, no, I do think that the US is in over its head, right? We're tackling too many things at once. We're also tackling things domestically. We're turning people against, they're turning people against the government. And people are not happy at home with us. They're definitely not happy abroad with us. And, it's just too much all at once. So here is Donald Trump, right, admitting that he had no idea that his own administration paused weapons shipments to Ukraine. Did he have no idea? I do think that, because people like Trump, presidents, aren't always in on all the things, they may actually not know. He's just a figurehead, people. But I'm not quite certain that this is accurate. But what I do think is that there's pressure to continue supporting Ukraine. And that pressure is not just coming from the Democrats. That pressure is coming from the entire establishment that really seeks to continue this war and has other plans of attacking Russia through other fronts, like we've seen via Azerbaijan also, and of course Poland. Those are the areas we're looking at, right? And so I think there is an attempt to try to prolong this in a way that looks like we're not losing, but we really are. So let's just listen to what Trump said for a sec.
Weapons to Ukraine, as you said last night. Last week, the Pentagon paused some shipments of weapons to Ukraine. Did you approve of that pause?
We wanted to put defensive weapons because Putin is not treating human beings right. He's killing too many people. So we're sending some defensive weapons to Ukraine, and I've approved that.
So who ordered the pause last week?
I don't know. Why don't you tell me?
I think that's a question for the
Go
Pentagon.
ahead. Yeah.
Okay, and I think this is, the next one is pretty much he's saying the same thing. So Matt, just real quick, what's your take on Trump now pivoting towards, all right, we're going to send weapons to Ukraine in spite of course, what we just talked about, the stockpile shortage?
Well, first of all, no, I think he was caught off guard. Absolutely. I don't think he's faking this. And I do think it's a matter of his ego. I think that would explain it. If he feels like he was left out of a discussion, then just to spite the decision that he was apparently not in the room for, he's going to override it and he's going to keep it going. Just so that's what you get for putting me in a position where I didn't know what was going on and the reporter knew before I did. And he hates that. He hates that. I know there's other situations where that's happened where it looks like it was part of the theater of it, but there are I do believe, yes, you're 100% right that presidents aren't necessarily going to be in the room when big decisions are made, and Trump hates that. So it might be out of spite that he's overriding this right now, but it's only a matter of time where there won't be anything to override. It'll be done. We won't have the capability to do this anymore.
Yeah, and anybody would hate that, right? You're the president of the United States and you're suddenly just finding out information from a journalist. It makes you look like an idiot.
Yep.
So it's kind of like I would be very angry myself too. But again, it goes back to Trump doesn't run the show. Like nobody does. Even, we can make fun of Joe Biden because he was senile, but of course he didn't run the show either. Like none of these people are really running the show. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
I was going to say about Biden. What we have to understand about Biden is that that is exactly the reason we know that the president doesn't run things, is because they were able to function even with a demented president. Nobody came and said, "Uh-oh, we have a problem. We got to switch this guy out." They only switched him out when it was time to do it, which was at the convenient time to put in Kamala. But to actually run the country, there's your sign that anybody who's still doubting that the president has any power at all, look how well they functioned with the demented president all that time. And they had no problem doing it.
Yeah. Like they had zero problem doing it. Like they'd been doing it all along almost. So the reason why I think this is like an establishment thing is because here we go from Trump speaking about Putin. And granted, we shouldn't take too much stock in what Trump says because, like I said, he's there to like confuse people. He says one thing one day, the next day, 100% flips on that thing, and on and on and on. But we have seen a trend in his speaking of Putin in a very negative way now, right? It was before like Putin, he's an interesting guy, or he's blah blah blah, more positive. Now we're seeing him pivot towards the same rhetoric that any Democrat could have said about Putin. And so if we go to the thing under Putin, Jayme, the first tweet, he starts talking about Putin in a more negative way. He said he came away disappointed from a telephone call with Putin because he said it doesn't appear that he is looking to stop Russia's war against Ukraine. Trump very well knows. Before we play it, I want to say this. Trump very well knows the problem with Russia-Ukraine. He knows what Putin wants. Putin wants the core issue, and not just Putin, but Russia wants the core problems that led to the war in Ukraine to not be repeated. No NATO ascension for Ukraine, no NATO troops, no, their national security interests protected, no more of this expansionist BS. Get your troops away. We can end the war here. We need to understand the root causes and who started this war. We need to understand the regime change aspect of it. We're going to denazify these areas. We don't want any of that over here. It's very simple. Anybody who's been following this knows it. And Trump knows it. But now he's suddenly deflecting to attacks on Putin's character, just like a Democrat would. So let's listen to what he said.
Russia and Ukraine. Are you speaking to Zelensky tomorrow? And what are you hoping? I'm
speaking to President Zelensky tomorrow, early in the morning. And, I'm very disappointed with the conversation I had today with President Putin, because I don't think he's there. And I'm very disappointed. Well, it's not, I'm just saying, I don't think he's looking to stop. And that's too bad.
Russia and
So it's Putin that's not looking to stop the war. It's not Ukraine, right? Like it's not Ukraine, when the reality is Russia has been along and is still waiting they've been more than like completely complacent when it comes to this stuff. I mean, they've been restraining themselves in many ways because Ukraine has attacked them at the same time as they were going into negotiations, very much like Israel attacked Iran to a lesser level. But this is exactly what's been going on. And so it's interesting now he's just saying it's Putin. And when before we were getting the whole, Zelensky and Trump are fighting, Trump doesn't like Zelensky and all of this. What do you make of this pivot, Matt? Why do you think that we're seeing this? Because there's more coming, but so far, your thoughts?
I think this shift we're seeing, it's kind of gradual, although these are shocking, strong words, but there's been this kind of gradual shift over these 6 months where he started out as, the fighting with Zelensky, that I'm going to middleman this. I'm the genius. I'm the art of the deal guy. You voted for me. I'm going to do this in a day. Okay, maybe a little more than a day, but I'm going to get it done. I'm going to middleman. I'm going to moderate this between these two people. And I think that what happens is he gets in on these calls with Putin, and he realizes that he doesn't have the sophistication that Putin has had this entire time. His composure, his ability to kind of look at things with not being emotional and acting out of reason, which is the only reason we've gotten this far, I believe, is Putin's demeanor throughout this whole thing. But ultimately, I think he might have been, Trump might have been affected by some of the recent interviews Putin has done, where he talks about, he said recently in an interview that the way the American machine is designed is that, there is not actually a president that decides stuff. That he talked about men in black suits walking in and saying, we're in charge. And he said that publicly. This is how America functions. And Trump might have taken that one personal. Who knows? But yeah, the fact that he's shifting to this place is because I don't think he has the ability that he thought he did to art of the deal his way through to victory here. It's more complicated. And he knows these things about Russia. He knows these things about the history of our relationship with NATO and Russia. But the problem is I believe he doesn't have the sophistication to know how to conduct himself from this point out. So this just might be a pouting game he's playing right now.
Interesting you mentioned that about Putin. He said for a long time he's talked about the U.S. Political system, very much like other leaders like in Cuba, Venezuela, pretty much in countries that Syria, former Bashar al-Assad, that have been affected by the U.S. They understand very well how the U.S. Foreign policy functions, regardless of which party is in. And most recently, Vladimir Putin talked about not just Vladimir Putin, but there were several politicians that were talking about the connection between the United States and Russia during the Second World War, also the connection of Russia, the Russian Empire, assisting the American revolutionaries. And this was talked about, of course, on July 4th or around that time. And Russia congratulated the United States on this. This is all diplomacy. And meanwhile, you have Trump, and this was, I believe, shortly after July 4th, right? You have Donald Trump coming out and repeating the same exact message we just heard, that, Zelensky is a victim, he's being hit hard, and that he's very disappointed in Putin. And so this is now the message, that Trump is disappointed in Putin, that Putin did something wrong, that Russia did something wrong. Now we're pivoting to this whole scenario. Why? Well, I think they have something up their sleeve. And I still think Russia will move forward with attempts to negotiate. But what I see here is a reflection also from what happened in Iran. And I'll get to that in a minute. But I do want to point to this just real quick, what Trump said again, so you guys can see how similar it is to the other video.
Yeah, we had a good call. We talked about different things, and we had a very good call. I think a very, very strategic call.
Are there plans for partners in Ukraine on conditions?
Well, we've been helping them, and we'll continue to help them. It's a pretty tough situation. We'll see what happens. I told you I was very unhappy with my call with President Putin. And it just seems like he wants to go all the way and just keep killing people. No good. It's not good. I wasn't happy with it.
Mr. President, are there any
So he specifically said that Putin wants to go out and keep killing people. That's a very hefty accusation to make, right? That's not just saying I don't like his attitude. That's saying he's killing people now. Now he's escalating the whole scenario. One more video I want to show, Matt, before we get your thoughts. So the next video, Jayme, if you can pull that one up. This is interesting, by Spencer Hakimian, who literally says, He quotes Trump, and then he says it took Donald Trump a full decade to realize that Vladimir Putin has been playing him for the clown that he is. So now Donald Trump is realizing that Vladimir Putin has been playing him. Now, this is a Democratic, viewpoint, obviously establishment, but it's just interesting. Along with the Epstein stuff, we're now seeing Donald Trump take the position of the establishment Democrats. So not only did he sell you out regarding to Epstein, also Palantir, the big, beautiful Bill Act, full of money for the defense. He was supposed to be the peace president. And now he's also taking the side of the Democrats when it comes to the Russia-Ukraine war. So what is left for Trump to do? What is the difference then between Trump and Biden, I ask? Because it's just, I don't really see a difference, right? And look what he says about Vladimir Putin yet again. So this is, again, just around the same time.
And I don't know, we get a lot of bullshit thrown at us by Putin, for you want to know the truth. He's very nice all the time, but it turns out to be meaningless.
Do you want to sanction him? Lindsey Graham has a sanctions bill on Russia. Do you want him to?
I'm looking at it. Yeah, no, I'm looking. The Senate is passing and passed a very, very tough sanctions. But yeah, I'm looking at it.
Can you sign that?
It's, I don't know.
Okay, so Matt, anything you want to say before I show the next one, which is the leaked audio?
Yeah, I'm glad we're gonna hear the leaked audio here in a second. And I'll say this though. Regardless of his ego and his inability to conduct himself on an intellectual level that is necessary for somebody who's actually making deals for peace, which we know is not actually happening. Aside from all that, you mentioned Palantir, and I want to remind people, if they don't know this or you've heard this before, but Alex Karp, CEO of Palantir, who just got all these the big, beautiful bill. There's all this money. We went through this, and Fiorella, you did an excellent job on that, by the way, last week, going through the entire military budget, AI budget within the big, beautiful bill. This is all to benefit Palantir, to remember that the guy in charge of this company that's going to then oversee government agencies and have us all on a database, this company just did a deal with Israel. By the way, that also happened. So Israel's now using all of this information to do their nefarious actions, not just in Gaza, but in Lebanon, in Yemen, in Syria. So this is this is a global project. But I want to remind people that Palantir's objective, according to their CEO Alex Karp, is to do a three-prong war against Iran, China, and Russia. So I would conclude in this time that it's most likely that, aside from Trump's ego not feeling good in being left out of meetings and not being able to get on the level of Putin, there is a responsibility he has right now by his handlers at Palantir. His responsibility is to manufacture consent in his base to be okay with these three different wars on three different fronts. And so when we talk about the difference between a Biden and Harris administration versus a Trump, this one is actually more beneficial than a Biden-Harris, because Biden-Harris couldn't really they got their base ready to go to war against Russia. They don't necessarily have that clout with Iran, and they certainly don't have it with China. Trump is able to do all three. All he's got to do is manufacture this consent for the Russia part of it, and he's pretty good to go. He's pretty much got most of his base on board for a three-pronged war. So that's something I would say is the overall thing going on here moving forward.
Exactly. And the big, beautiful bill, and also the budget, the defense budget for 2026, outlines the blueprint for the foreign policy that we're going to see going into the next Trump years and beyond Donald Trump. So again, add it to your list of things, because it's just going to get bigger and bigger. The video I want to show, and this is I think very interesting, is this is leaked audio, right? This is from CNN. And this is a leaked audio where Trump apparently openly admits that he threatened to bomb the shit out of Moscow and bomb Beijing. So again, Russia, China, not because he intended to, but because he hoped 10% believability would be enough to preserve order. Putin didn't believe him. She didn't either, because both understand the deeper equation. The US no longer has escalation supremacy. A single move towards Moscow over Beijing guarantees annihilation in return. I actually agree with this whole thing by Thomas Keith. Trump's entire peace doctrine is built on plausible lunacy, the idea that he might be just crazy enough to do it. But even he knew 10% was generous. In reality, Beijing and Moscow have already gamed it out. The retaliation plans are locked, the missile paths are mapped, and the timers have no need for speeches. What this leak really proves is that the American power has decayed into theater, soundbites, bravado, scripted psychosis, meant to compensate for the lost material leverage. Trump wanted to scare Putin, and instead, he confirmed to the world that the U.S. strategy hinges on bluffing nuclear roulette just to stay in the game. Now, I agree to a certain extent that we were bluffing, and we have been, but we are psychotic enough to do something, because there are people in our government that are psychotic enough to do something, guys, and don't put it past them. They absolutely 100% are. I will add to this before we play the video, just really quick. I just want to add to this. Iran really proved that the United States is full of shit. They not only did they not destroy Iran's nuclear deposits, they exposed the fact that Iran can take on both Israel and the United States and stand alone. They exposed the fact that the United States is an infantile country / empire that is really young in comparison to Iran. I mean, they've been around thousands of years. So has Russia. So has China. So when we look at who we are as a nation, right? And the nation, the lack of nation that we have was it's basically controlled by corporations and the military intelligence apparatus. Then we start understanding how infantile and immature we look to the rest of the world. And I'm talking about our government, okay? When I talk about this stuff, I'm talking about what our government is showing to the world about us, and then what they indoctrinate to us from the moment we are born into every facet of our being. You go and check the next 50 movies. They're all about how evil Iranians are, how evil Russians are, and how evil the Chinese are, embedded in every single aspect. And that veil of just propaganda is coming to a close. And we are in decline. We're an empire in decline. And so we're just being exposed at every turn. And I think they thought that Iran wouldn't have the capabilities that it did. And so now there is a full-on focus on Iran. And Iran's not over. The situation with Iran is not over. That is ongoing. And it seems like it's shifting to Lebanon. So I just want to point that out to put an understanding as to what, why you're going to see Trump talk about Russia, talk about China, because as Matt said, this is where, this is what it is. This is where we're headed. So let's go ahead and play it, and then we'll comment on it.
That he once had with President Putin. The audio obtained by the authors of a new book that is just out today. And for context, the president has long said that Putin would never have invaded Ukraine on his watch because of something he told him once privately. Trump had never revealed what that was.
I had a very strong conversation with President Putin, and he understood, and I won't go into the great details of the conversation because nobody has to know that. But I will tell you, it never, ever would have happened.
I don't want to say it, but did they fear me? I suspect they did.
Well, tonight we're learning those details as the audio reveals that Trump says that he threatened not just President Putin, but also China's President Xi Jinping. And this is what he told donors about what exactly that conversation looked like during a private fundraiser last year.
To Putin, I said, if you go in to Ukraine, we're going to bomb the shit out of Moscow. I'm telling you, I have no choice. The public wants it. The public. So he goes like,
I don't believe you. I said, he said, no way. And I said, way. And then he goes, like, I don't believe you. But the truth is, he believed me 10%. And I told you this, he believed me 10%. Then I'm with President Xi of China. But I said the same thing to them. I said, you know, if you go into Taiwan, I'm going to bomb the shit out of Beijing. He thought I was crazy. He said, Beijing, you're going to bomb Beijing. I said, I have no choice. I got to bomb them. We're going to bomb Beijing. And he didn't believe me either, except 10%. And 10% is what you did. In fact, 5% would have been okay too. And we never had a problem. We would have never had a problem.
Matt, your thoughts?
I think it's in, obviously CNN needs to put this out and blast it at full volume, get their viewers engaged and scared to death, of course, that Trump could launch nuclear war on either of these two countries because he feels like it. He's playing like bully recess, between classes. It sounds to me like he's talking to his donor class on this tape, and it's a lot of showy offy stuff. I think it's a whole lot of nothing. However, it does inform us what we've kind of already known. It kind of re-emphasizes that we are this, like you said, this is great perspective you're giving. We are so young compared to these two nations, and we have to pretend that we're bigger bullies than we are, and we know that's how bullies on a playground work. They have to the bigger their bark, the softer their bite. That's how it works. It's the louder the bully is, the less they actually have a capability of backing it up. The people to be most afraid of on the playground are the ones that aren't talking so much, that are staying quiet. So we already know that. But again, CNN's going to blast this because it's a big reveal, secret tape. I don't think it's such a much a secret tape. It's just showing this is how Trump behaves when he's around his donor class. He does a little, look what I said to him. And he said, I said, no, he said, no way. I said, way. I mean, come on, guys. This is not the story. This is not the story, but we need to know this is being blasted out there right now by CNN, of course.
Right. And as always, the CNN intent, as you said, is to scare people and say, oh, look, Trump is Hitler and Trump's going to go press the red button and all of this, like, even though he's doing pretty much the same thing Biden was doing. But the thing that
Biden actually did it. Biden actually said, we're going to take care of the Nord Stream pipeline. Well, what do you mean we're going to take? Oh, we're going to handle it. We'll you'll see. And then we actually did it. So he might have been more of a bite than a bark in that case. But I just wanted to go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's true. That's true. And but the thing is, like, we are obviously bluffing. That's the whole thing. Like, it's like we, as you said, are the bully on the playground, and we have this desire to convince everybody that we're still the powerful one, the popular one, the one everybody wants to be. But that's not the case anymore. Trump has been threatening BRICS. He's been threatening countries that join BRICS with tariffs. He presented tariffs and such threats to Japan and South Korea. He's going out in full force, showing that America's tough, that America still got it. And all that does is show how insecure we are and how vulnerable we really are. And I think people need to really understand that it's not the same anymore. And they're going to do crazy shit to try to maintain the semblance that it is. And that's why you're seeing so much chaos and so many distractions, because they don't know how to proceed. And they're feeling threatened by the new kids on the block that are now not buying their BS. Because, as I said, Russia before and up until this point has been more than willing, and I think they still are, to have conversations regarding peace talks with Ukraine and regarding any sort of solution to this war. They're more than ready. But both Zelensky and the United States have been pretty much talking out of both sides of their mouth and not following through. So, I just want to close this segment by saying that, from Moscow's end, they're still waiting for Kiev to confirm the date for their next round of direct peace talks, because there were supposed to be at the end of this past month, but that never happened. They initially exchanged some prisoners, and then, nothing else happened. They had 2 negotiations in Turkey thus far, and then they had draft proposals. And then when Dmitry Peskov was asked whether there had been any progress on setting a 3rd round, he said no. And he stated, as the Russian President Vladimir Putin said last week, we are waiting for a proposal from the Ukrainian side on the possible dates. So, this is what's going on. And now Ukraine is threatening to invade the 2 regions that Russia already took, which are Belgorod and Kursk. And Russia is not going to back up now. And I think Iran also has a huge factor in that because of what happened with Iran. And because even though, as I've mentioned before, you have the Russian connection to Israel, there's also the Russian awareness that if Iran goes, it leaves Russia and China more vulnerable. And so there's a lot of things at stake here, a lot of things being, positioned. And even though there's a desire to normalize relations with the United States, far more than there is a desire to normalize relations with the EU, this is for Russia now. They're seeing how, and I think they've had this sort of, multiple plans at hand. They're seeing that the United States is less and less trustworthy, and they're just going to continue along doing what they're doing, expanding and expanding until, there's nothing left, essentially. And again, as they expand, they're not going to go back. This isn't like they keep saying, okay, well, the longer Ukraine takes, the less of Ukraine there'll be. And is the United States going to stop them? I think they're trying to, using their proxies. But, that's again, all of this in every sector could escalate into something bigger, because now we have hotspots from Eurasia to West Asia to the South China Sea, where we're seeing, our foreign policy and our money and our defense be directed to. So I expect something big in the next few weeks. I expect something to happen. And we're seeing scuffles right now in Lebanon. We're seeing, everything that's happened in Syria. Jolani just got rehabilitated, completely. The sanctions are coming out of Syria. And so I think there's definite preparations for something along those lines. So that's all I wanted to say on that. If you have anything else, Matt.
I agree that there's something big brewing right now, next couple weeks here. But our position on the chessboard, or I'll make this analogy. I think that we've never been one to trust, but because our history is basically bluffing at every turn. And basically lying and cheating and stealing, which I think everybody knows. Everybody around our world knows this. This is our history and NATO's history. But at this point, moving forward, I think that we're just sitting on a poker table, showing that we have nothing but monopoly money in front of us, and you can't really bluff with monopoly money when everyone else is using, real coins. So there it is. But yeah, we have to keep an eye on this for sure. And I agree. Something's brewing right now. On a larger scale that will, change our course of where we're headed as far as no longer being the empire of the world.
Exactly. And, part of that, as I stated, has happened from Iran, right? What happened with Iran was, I think, not expected by some people in the Pentagon, in the defense apparatus. And I think they were not fond of how Iran was able to maintain itself. Now, recently, let's go into how Netanyahu visited Washington. And so this tweet from Marwa Osman says, not a parody, the butcher of Gaza has a blood-soaked Peace Prize nomination to the man who armed him to the teeth. A war criminal endorsing another war criminal. History will remember this moment as the day genocide tried to pat itself on the back. And let's just go ahead and play the video to see that. What can we expect?
So I want to present to you, Mr. President, the letter I sent to the Nobel Prize Committee. It's nominating you for the Peace Prize, which is well-deserved, and you should get it.
Thank you very much. This I didn't know. Wow. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Coming from you in particular, this is very meaningful. Thank you very much, Bibi.
Thank you. Thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you. It's a great honor.
So I want to present to you.
Matt, the moral of the story is if you enable and fund and send weapons to a genocidal maniac, then you are deserving of the Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, we live in a fucking cartoon. I had to say it, guys. I'm so sorry. We really do. And it's worse than that.
Yeah, and the sentence he seemed a little tongue-tied there for a moment, and I believe he didn't know that. I think he did find out in the moment. But when he said, and coming from you, you could have ended that sentence a lot of different ways. Like, what a twisted irony this is coming from you, or like what? But he said no. It's meaningful, even more meaningful. But this is a twisted reality we're in, where a genocider can reward the funder of a genocider with a Peace Prize nomination. This is, and let's remember the narrative that the mainstream is telling you, because if you turn on CNN and they are telling you this story, what they're telling you is, Netanyahu came to DC to have peace talks. So it kind of makes sense that he's giving this nomination to Trump. The peace talks are, what are we going to do to get Hamas to start, coming to terms with that? We have to figure this out, and they have to stop being so aggressive and holding on to our hostages. So that's still the mainstream narrative here, that they're trying to work out something. But right before he handed Trump that folder, Trump was asked a question: what's going on with the two-state solution? Is that something that is still possible? And Trump says, I can't answer that question. Why don't you let our guest of honor answer for you? And then the guest of honor, the war criminal, genocider, child murderer, says there is no possibility of a two-state solution, because if we give up control militarily of security and everything we control in Gaza, of Palestine, if we give that up, they will kill us, and we're not suicidal. So we're never going to give them their own state. If we do that, they will kill us. That's the end of the story. That's the peace negotiation. So you're not going to get that part of the story. You're certainly not going to get the part where Trump can't even answer that question because he's not in charge. He has to pass it to the guest of honor. So all that leading up to the folder being passed with the nice little nomination letter is even more twisted and crazy. And Trump being a little tongue-tied there does tell you a lot of what he's not able to say in that moment.
Yeah. And those are very, very good points to say, because it really lends credibility to the fact that Donald Trump is just literally not in charge. I mean, I have no say in this. And also, there are people out there who are saying Netanyahu, is weakened, that Israel is done for with the Trump administration. I have no idea where you're getting that. I mean, the guy is just, he gets a red carpet every time he goes to DC. He gets, everything he wants. This is why he's even nominating Trump, because he said, thank you for everything you did. Like everything you did, meaning like helping me genocide Palestinians. Yeah. And so, that's great. And so there's been this talk about a ceasefire, right? That we know Israel will not respect. They've been telling us they're not going to. So if there's any such notion, it will essentially be at the expense of Palestinians being free. They would be under the Israeli control. And that's essentially what would happen. So people are going to start saying, oh, a ceasefire is happening, blah, blah, blah. That's what we've been hearing. A ceasefire essentially would mean the end of Palestinians, because they're already telling you they're not going to stop. They don't even want a two-state solution. This is why a two-state solution isn't possible, because they refuse to stop killing them. So you can't have a two-state solution when one side wants to genocide every single person that's not an Israeli. So it just doesn't work that way. And on top of that, you have Israel now attacking Lebanon. And so that's the next tweet I want to show. Was there was an assassination in Tripoli, which is in northern Lebanon. And this is how Israel now has shifted, right, from Iran to attacking Lebanon, because they know they can attack Hezbollah, and they already have there's Israeli and US intelligence already in Lebanon. There's the government. It doesn't consist fully all of Hezbollah. So they're carrying out multiple assassinations in northern Lebanon, and they're targeting a Hamas commander that was there. Now, Hezbollah has since completely, entirely said that they're standing by the Palestinians, they're standing by the resistance, they've committed fully, and they're not going to stop fighting Israel. So that's definitely not going to end well, because we're again seeing this now go towards Lebanon, which is what some of us had predicted. Now, after that, this is why Iran once again becomes important, because the Iranian issue isn't done for. And this is why I want to talk about this interview. Now, everybody's been talking about this interview, and you usually get the side that's, oh, Tucker Carlson is pro-Iran. How dare he interview the president of this Islamic Republic that's just such a radical, totalitarian dictatorship. How dare he interview this guy? Oh my God, it's worse than Putin. You're going to get, those morons that are saying all of this stuff, which is completely insane. Of course, he should interview him. Of course, we should talk to everybody. As journalists, you want to interview all kinds of people. It's great that he interviewed him for the American public to hear what the president of Iran would have to say. Now, some people said this is good because, it really shows the average cowboy who, Iran is, and how they're such peaceful people, and how they're not building nuclear weapons, and how they really are just, they're just regular people who have zero desire to hurt us and all of these things. But the perspective of some people in Iran, some people from the region of Pezeshkian is not positive, because one, he is extremely just not somebody that should have been in front of the camera. He doesn't express himself well. He comes off as groveling in the interview. He comes off as sort of bowing down to the Western narrative. And I'm going to go through some of this and explain what I mean. And there might be various perspectives about this, because there's a difference in, say, the resistance with the Imam Khomeini, the Ayatollah, versus Pezeshkian, who comes from the liberal sector of Iran, right? There's a complete and total difference as to how they express themselves and who he represents and how he is viewed by members of the resistance, which is not mostly positive. And so I do want to go into that, because it is important in terms of how we view things differently depending on the background of things. So Matt, anything you want to say before we listen to the interview?
Yeah, no, just that the fact that this existed and it exists now, it happened, is a great thing. We need more of this. And we said the same thing about Tucker when he was the only one interviewing Putin. So anybody criticizing that, or that shouldn't have happened, it's ridiculous. What we need is more journalists stepping up, giving us more options of more approaches, because there's always going to be things you coulda, woulda, shoulda, or why didn't you ask this or that. So just saying that going in, it's a good thing. But now, because we have this interview, we can now give it some, some critical response, and give shouts out to Tucker when he deserves it, and then criticize him when he deserves it as well. But that's the point. So we need more of this, but at least we have this one. So yeah, let's hear some clips.
All right, so Jayme, let's start with the clip from 0 minutes to 2 minutes and 21 seconds. Yeah.
Mr. President, thank you very much for doing this. There is a pause, or seems to be a pause, in the war between the United States and Iran. How do you think this will end? How would you like to see it end?
We did not start this war, and we do not want this war to continue in any way. From the very beginning, it was the motto of my administration that I always adhere to, and that was fostering the national unity inside the country, and also fostering peace and tranquility and friendship with the neighboring countries and with the rest of the world.
The American President Donald Trump has said that the United States bombed your enrichment facilities because the government of Iran refused to give up its nuclear program, and that there can be no peace until Iran does give up that nuclear program. Would you be willing to give up the nuclear program in exchange for peace?
I would like to tell you what has happened, and it was Netanyahu since 1984 has created this false mentality that Iran seeks a nuclear bomb, and it has insinuated that Iran is trying to develop a nuclear bomb in the past, and it has put it in the minds of every U.S. president since then, and to make them believe that we would like to have a nuclear bomb. But the truth is that we have never been after developing a nuclear bomb, not in the past, not presently, or in the future, because this is wrong, and this is in contrast to the religious decree or the fatwa, which has been issued by His Eminence, the Supreme Leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, that so it is religiously forbidden for us to go after a nuclear bomb. And this was always corroborated thanks to our cooperation with IAEA, because they were always there that to verify this and to substantiate that we have never wanted a nuclear bomb. But unfortunately, this cooperation was disturbed by the unlawful attacks against our nuclear facilities.
Okay, so Matt, I'll go to you in a sec. I just want to point out a few things. The reason why people were angry at him, they weren't angry at Tucker. So this isn't about what Tucker did wrong. This is about Pezeshkian's performance, because he was asked if Iran would be willing to give up, their nuclear armament for peace, and the reality is, if Iran does that, they're done, because in the United States, again, we've talked about this, and Israel will not hesitate to bomb Iran again. They will not hesitate to use nuclear weapons against Iran. Israel has nuclear weapons. Why should Tehran not have them? And so the one side says, well, he needs to, calm people down in the US who think that Iran's just going to attack them with nukes, which is fine because Tucker's audience is primarily regular normie or Americans who are conservative and have maybe always had a perception that Iran is evil and, just wants to go and bomb the world because that's what they're told. So I can understand that perspective. On the other hand, regardless of this interview, a lot of these people are still going to think that. And the majority of people still view Iran as a civilization they don't understand, as a people they don't have really much of an idea about. And so he could have talked about the fact that Israel has nuclear weapons, that other countries have nuclear weapons, that Iran is going to it has been seeking peace, but he didn't need to necessarily talk about how Iran has worked with the IAEA because the IAEA literally completely betrayed them and has been working with Zionist Israel. There was no mention of that, which made him seem like either aloof or entirely weak. And a lot of people right now in Iran understand that this is existential for them, that they need to continue their research, let's just say that, to survive. And so that wasn't necessarily well received by a lot of people for that reason. And people can think, oh, well, that's nitpicky. But if you're Iranian or if you're from these countries that have just been bombed by Israel and the United States while they were ready to negotiate, there has been a shift after this whole thing as to how Iranians feel about Iran, even those that were more liberal. And they need somebody to go out there and reaffirm that they're going to do what they need to do to protect themselves and their people. And that's not how that came across to them. So that's just like my criticism. I like to hear your thoughts on, that exchange.
I will give a little more positive critique here on the full intention. I believe there was a full intention for what his assignment was in this. Whoever decided he was going to be the spokesperson in this interview, and it was going to be on Tucker, and all the decisions that were made to lead up to this interview. I believe that his assignment was to plant a little seed in Tucker's audience and beyond, plant a little seed that we're intentionally in the West not hearing the full story of another country and their need to survive, but their intention to not be aggressors. I think that's the most important part of this. And there was another, I don't know if we're going to play this part of the clip, but he does bring up Israel. He talks about, in another part of the interview, he talks about how the American people are being deceived by their greatest ally. And there's these opportunities they take to manufacture consent with us to make us think that Iran is out to kill us. And meanwhile, it's Israel setting up situations for us to then be tricked about. So he did get into that, but you're right. He didn't get into all of the nefarious behavior of Israel. Of course, I don't think there was in that half hour, there's not enough time to list all of their horrible things they've done on that. We talk about lists, like the list they're keeping of Israel. He doesn't have time to get into all of that. But if I was in Iran, and I'm just speculating, if I'm there, I wouldn't necessarily be mad about him not shouting at the top of his lungs, of course we have to defend ourselves against Israel. They will destroy us if we don't build this stuff. Maybe it's okay that he left that part out. Maybe it was more about the positioning and just planting the seed that so the American people, anyone watching this interview, Tucker, or anybody sharing it online, that the next event that happens, and like you said earlier, Fee, this is far from over. The next event that happens, the next time Western media has their narrative ready to go to tell us that Iran is ready to take us out and they hate America and they want us all dead, then maybe that seed will kind of sprout a little bit. You go, wait a minute, what are we not hearing? What's the other side? And so maybe that, in that sense, this was good and he was effective, at least with that part of his intention and what he was set out to do.
Yeah, I do think that there were people that thought, okay, well, he's going to speak to an American audience, and that's who's going to be listening to this. But there's definitely a difference between how a lot of Iranians felt about it, which kind of is the point, like points to the fact that, I guess from their perspective, is why are you placating to them? Why do you care about what the Americans think when they're not going to do anything at all when their government decides to bomb the hell out of you? And that's kind of what the feeling was. You're mincing the words, you're sort of deflecting here and there. You're trying to pacify, which from a PR perspective, sure, okay, that's great for the American audience. I agree with that. But from their perspective, it's like, here we go again. you're not really fully telling the truth here. You're not really sounding confident. And that was the criticism. So let's go to the second part of this towards it was like the 7 something mark. Jayme 7-minute mark into 9:36. Let's go.
Legislators and the public opinion here.
You've suggested that you were anxious to resolve your conflicts with the United States through diplomacy and that was derailed by war. Would you be willing to restart diplomacy? And could you tell us in general but precise terms the kind of deal you would be willing to accept?
You see, I am of the belief that we could very much easily resolve our differences and conflicts with the United States through dialogue and talks. And, the international law could serve as the framework or the basis for a deal in which the rights of all nations, Iranian nation, would be respected. But unfortunately, it was Netanyahu that destroyed these diplomacy and these diplomatic efforts. We have always, we never wanted anything beyond the respect for our rights, rightful rights enshrined in international law. But as I said, it was Netanyahu that brought unrest to our region and is fomenting unrest and tensions in the region. As I have always said, we have always been after peace. It has been my motto. It has been my belief. It has been my heartfelt opinion that we need to live in peace and harmony during this short and limited time granted to us by God Almighty, to live in peace and tranquility with everybody. And everybody in the world should live like that. But I would also like, on the other hand, to reiterate that our people are capable enough to defend themselves in self-defense during any kind of attack. And I believe that the United States president can very well guide the region and the world to peace and tranquility, or, on the other hand, to lead it to forever wars.
So one thing he said that's true there is that Iran is capable of handling itself. And I thought that was a good comment to make. And that, the president can lead it to peace or to forever war. I think that's an important statement that he made. That's rather true. I will say that what really, really, really angered some people was a couple of things. One, he is saying that Iran wants to negotiate with the United States, and Iranians in the resistance and elsewhere in the region know that there is no negotiating with the United States. The United States wants to overthrow Iran. They want to capture Iran and give it to Israel. And there is no changing that, because none of these administrations are going to pivot on that. As of now, the American government is captured by neocons and warmongers. So there is no negotiating with that. So it seemed like, once again, a weak move. He is once again talking about peace and all of this stuff. But for people who understand that, resistance is actually standing up against the government that has literally bombed and killed your people, and actually doing something to stop that, they see this as just complete and total, salad dressing. It's just word salad, because they understand that that's just not going to happen, right? And then he also focuses very much on Israel. Israel did this, Israel did that, but doesn't really talk about what the United States did. He kind of pushes the guilt away from the United States by focusing on Israel. The United States literally attacked Tehran and killed people. And so you have this whole thing where people are like, why are you pretty much bending over backwards to show that, you know, we just want peace. We're just peace and love. It's not who the resistance is and how they view it. And so I'm going to show a couple of thoughts on that from people from the region. But yeah, just Matt, just those two things. I want to hear your thoughts on that segment.
Yeah. So, so the part about the negotiations, look, we know that there was actually negotiators at the table. So let's remember that happened. We had actual talks set up. We had the lead negotiator who, and there were 3 others, I believe, but the lead negotiator was murdered by Israel. We know that happened, and that was right before the last scheduled meeting that was supposed to be on a Sunday. And then they retroactively, the Western narrative was that, they expired. So they retroactively said that this 60-day clock had expired, even though they had scheduled that meeting on the Sunday, which was, I guess, day 63. But I whether or not Trump was in on that or not in on that, as far as the assassination, this is why he's bringing up Israel and blaming Israel and saying, but we do want to sit down with the U.S. So even though, and I understand there's pushback coming from Iran, we should be giving our country should be getting more of the blame. But if there's a chance that Israel's the one actually calling the shots and that Trump actually did want to sit down at that negotiating table, I mean, I'm speculating here, but it seems at every move we're doing exactly what Israel wants at every move. So why are we setting up these meetings in the first place? So the one part I wish he had done is specify that we were at the table and now they're dead. Why are they dead? Like that wasn't said. But the fact that he's doubling down and saying we do want to negotiate with the U.S., I think there's something there. Again, it's not the whole story, and I hear you on the part that why are we not getting any of the blame here? But we know those people existed. Their job was to negotiate. They're no longer alive. And by the way, the lead negotiator, his whole family was murdered by Israel.
Yep.
They targeted his apartment building. Dead, gone. That was the guy that was supposed to be speaking about this. So all that happened. He didn't mention that part, but the sentiment of Iran wanting peace is, I think, again, that was his assignment, and he carried out his assignment. That was the point.
Yeah, I do think that was the strategy, per se. So yeah, those are valid points. Let's go to a few tweets from people and their various reactions. So the first tweet is from Sarah, and she says, it's very optimistic of you, Mr. President, to think it was Netanyahu's war, because he did call it Netanyahu's war, not the U.S. Again, because would Israel be in the position it is to attack Iran if they didn't have the United States? And the answer is no. And also we're back at like only Israel. When we talk about Zionism, it's beyond Israel. There's a lot of people living in Israel who are Zionists, who are even beyond Israel. So that's why that was an important sentiment, I think, to a lot of people. There's also the Iran Observer, and they said, in general, Iranian officials never agreed to interviews with right-wing American media. So there's also this sort of apprehensiveness because of where Tucker comes from, right? Because usually it's been the neocons who have been leading and the Republicans who have been leading, the attacks on West Asia. And I find that to be an interesting comment. However, I don't think it's a bad thing that there is conversation or from an official in Iran with a very, very popular American commentator, because I think that that's actually a net positive for the most part, for most people. So I don't really see that as being a problem, but no. It's not usual. However, other people have talked to, CNN and others have interviewed several members of the former president before. So this is not anything new, but I think with Tucker, people just, because of the nature of where he's at, and the nature of where we're at, like it's a little bit different. So this is what Primo Radical said. The former president of Iran, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, was interviewed many, many times by U.S. corporate media. Why is there a different standard around Tucker Carlson interviewing the president of Iran now? And by that, we're alluding to the fact that so many people are angry that this even happened, which is absolutely ridiculous. And there shouldn't be any difference, but the difference is obviously where we're at geopolitically right now when it comes to Iran. And then this thing I want to this is now David Miller is extremely knowledgeable on the Middle East, and he lives in the region, and he has a opinion very much similar to how many Iranians are feeling on this. So he's quote tweeting this tweet that says a video's gone viral from the slain commander of the IRGC's Aerospace Force, Amir Ali Hajizadeh, in which he speaks about his forces being cash stripped with former President Rouhani refusing to pay them. The video has no date, but is most likely post 2018. Then David Miller quote tweets that and says Hassan Rouhani, Javed Sharif, and Masoud Pezeshkian sit atop a vast infrastructure of disloyalty inside Iran. So he's talking about the internal Iranian politics, the division. They are vocal opponents of the Islamic Republic and favor selling Iranian sovereignty to the U.S. empire, which would certainly result in the Zionization of the Iranian state, society, and culture. Not only are they comfortable with this, but they agitate for it. Remember that Pezeshkian was the liberal from there, but he won, so the Republic and the Ayatollah respected it. He says, I would humbly suggest that they and their parallel state inside the state should be held accountable under Iranian law. There's no reason for their ideology or just loyalty to be tolerated. This is very, very, I would say, heavy. This is kind of a major thing to say. But where he's getting it is that there are sources inside Iran that are not happy with him, not just from this interview, but from other comments he has made. And he just met, he's been meeting with him and several other officials have been meeting with the Saudis. They've been meeting with Turkey. They've been meeting with people that the Iranian resistance sees they have no business meeting with, that are trying to convince them to basically step down and give up. And they very well are afraid that and they know that if that happens, Iran is done, right? That's just the way it is. And so this is why people are angry, because he comes from that liberal doublespeak contingent, and people don't like that, and they don't want to see that. So there were a couple of Telegram posts, Matt, and I'm just going to read those two and then get your thoughts on that that I saw. Now, Jayme, you're not going to be able to probably bring those up, but I put them in the folder. But if you can bring those up, there it is. They say, I've seen some people say that Pezeshkian is naive. So this is a positive interview from someone in the region, or that he doesn't understand much, etc. In my opinion, the interview was okay. I dislike Pezeshkian, but this is an interview meant for the average cowboy in America, not for the majority of you people who are actively following the news through alternative media, different to Western narratives. I think this is a good interview that says we don't have an enmity with the people of the U.S., but we have a problem with the U.S. government, military, and its biggest military outpost in West Asia, Israel. You can listen to the rest of the interview on Tucker's website. I'll not cover the rest. And so the response, this is a very popular Telegram channels to that, was, I could not disagree more, to be honest. So the response is from Middle East Spectator. Why should we sugarcoat our beliefs and walk back on our principles to appease America, or even the American public? Why should I care about the average American cowboy? America will never wish goodness towards Iran, and meaning probably likely the government, no matter how much we try to show our goodwill, no matter how much we beg or how much we try to relate to the American people. America and Israel are one and the same. They are inseparable. This will never change unless change comes from within. And I agree 100% with that. This will never change unless we, the American people, change our government. And that has to be the case. In my opinion, conveying our positions properly in interviews like Martyr Raisi used to do, so that's the former president, even if it's somewhat confrontational towards the Americans, is much more important than appeasement or a positive impression in the media. As they say, give an inch and they'll take another inch. Before you know it, nothing of our principles will remain. We must stand behind our principles, even if the Americans call us terrorists, anti-Semites, or warmongers. Standing for our principles is the only thing that will gain respect. Pezeshkian sugarcoating what we believe won't get us anywhere. Acting as if we'd have relations with Israel as long as they were peaceful is just delusional and disrespectful to decades of resistance. Pezeshkian claiming that Trump is capable of peace is a stab in the heart of Martyr Soleimani, and opening the possibility to inspections just 2 weeks after the war is a slap in the face of the entire Iranian nation. And the last part is some from Iranian lawmakers that basically stated a response to the interview from Pezeshkian, and they called his response to Tucker weak, against national unity, and shameful. You have not yet learned from your previous unwise, dishonorable negotiations with America and would like to be deceived once again. If the government's foreign policy does not change, the parliament's approach to the government will change. Impeachment. So this is, once again, this is the reaction that people had, and maybe hard for us to understand, but there's a lot of underlying things happening, I think, internally in Iran. And, the guy goes on and talks about the passivity in responding to Tucker. At times I felt ashamed. I kept asking myself why the president of my country agreed to answer the questions of a shameless American journalist from the position of an accused person so passively instead of attacking America's policies. And so he, again, he didn't take a strong stance on America's role in it. So he talks about that. And then he quoted what he said, right? This is dishonorable, unintelligent. And so again, he went on and on and on and on about this. I mean, it was a very, impassioned response. And so I just wanted to put that out there for people, who are just on the side, there's, oh yeah, this is a terrible interview because Iran's government is totalitarian. And then there's, oh, this is a great interview because Americans got to hear, the side of from the president of Iran that they wouldn't normally get to hear, maybe to sort of understand that, they're a peaceful country, they're peaceful people. And then there's the Iranians reaction, the majority of them reacting in this way towards Pezeshkian. But that has more to do, I think, also, it has nothing to do with Tucker. It's more so with Pezeshkian and with the internal politics within Iran. And so that was just like, so we see the various viewpoints and understand that from a West Asian or Middle Eastern perspective, there is a desire to stop trying to appease the Americans because it really has done nothing for them in the last, 50 years and such. So.
Well, I'll say, look, there's some truth on both arguments, right? So on one hand, but the eloquent response, which it's hard to argue any of that, the Iranian values, standing behind convictions, none of that was done. It's not like we have to be firm and we like to bend over backwards for an American cowboy. So I get all that. However, there is an opportunity here that was taken, even though it wasn't a big, it wasn't a touchdown play for Iran, but it was moving up the field a little bit. And I think that there is a distinction between a Tucker interview on Twitter versus the time we come from, which when you go back to the 90s and all we had was one channel, CNN, 24-hour news, and that interview. And I think it's important to make this distinction. And I don't know if the responder of that Telegram group is making this distinction that our media has changed since the 90s. We have the opportunity for somebody like Tucker to sit down and conduct an interview however he wants. He can do whatever he wants. So it gives kind of a platform to say, well, the person coming on can also do what they want. We can actually have more of a real conversation, even though there's also staged elements. It's nothing like it used to be. I mean, we had no opportunity to do anything like this before. So we shouldn't be all combined into one category of we don't need to talk to Western media. It's like this Western media is more complicated than that. Just like their politics are more complicated than just one opinion. we have a lot of conflicting ideas here too. So I think the American cowboy, it's not that's actually a demographic, and it's actually important. And what we're doing here is we're fighting against the manufacturing consent that we've been subjugated to. 80s, 90s, 2000s. We remember the war on terror started this way, by subjugating us to this. We have to get them over there before they get us here. It was Islamophobia. It was racist. It was horrible. These things that people like Candace Owens are talking about now, saying I was duped. I was made to believe that those people over there were less than human. And so that's changing. I think the American cowboy, we talk about this person that's maybe simple-minded, but might be paying attention to the first time, and needs these little moves up the goal field, the field moves
like
up
the
the field.
crumbing.
Yes, we need a little bit of this, a little bit of, wait a minute, maybe there is a point of view over there that our media has been unwilling to show us on purpose all these years. Maybe there is something else going on. So yes, in a way, it might have been simplified a little bit, and of course, Pezeshkian did not go all in, and we know that, and he could have done better. He could have gone harder, but just planting that seed, I think, is something. And so, yes, they both have a point, but I'm glad, and I said this at the beginning, I'm glad that Tucker did this. We need more people doing this and challenging the Western media machine that you should just give us one little thing and that's it. And those clips of Diane Sawyer, or that little shot that Primo Radical shared, that's important because it shows you that, yes, there were times where you could sit down with this guy for 5 minutes and give a pre-packaged idea of what the American people are going to see. Now you have people like Tucker. We need more people like Tucker, people going out there and saying, I want to do my own type of interview. So let's have more of this, and then we'll have more to discuss.
Yeah, I think so. The interview was done for an American audience that is not educated on Iran, just like the Putin interview was. When Tucker interviewed Putin, there were a lot of things he missed. There's a lot of things he didn't understand because he lacked the cultural reference, the understanding of history, how Putin talks in historical context. This is normal for people to do when they're from other countries. Again, we're a very young empire, and the thing is, we what is it like? We went fast and hard, like we're crashing now. And we don't have the cultural, the historical, the traditional context. Our general audience is one thing. Tucker's audience is another. And that audience is more in general, less educated. I'm not trying to belittle, but they are less educated on foreign policy. They're not as deeply aware of all of these things. And so if you look at it from that aspect, then it was a normal thing. If you look at it from the Iranian aspect, where they just got bombed, both the United States and Israel are threatening them still. They're being told they can't have nukes when Israel has nukes. They're looking for a stronger presenting figure that aligns with the axis of resistance, that isn't trying to talk about finding peace with their attackers, the people that want to see them dead. So from that perspective, it was a weak performance, merit of criticism. So there's two things going on here, right? They're never gonna look at it and say this is great, because they're looking at it from a different point of view. And so the reason I brought that up is because we need to understand how our point of view, whether positive or negative, differs very much from the point of view of people in Iran, of people in the resistance. And that was the overwhelming point of view with people in the resistance. They don't like Pezeshkian. We've seen calls to impeach him. It's not about Tucker Carlson or anything Tucker did. Actually, what he did, I agree with you, is well. Like, I think we need to have more conversations, more American exposed to these conversations. Absolutely. And he has a platform that most others don't have to show that. However, I do see the other side where Pezeshkian is just not viewed as a leader that's aligning with Iranian, convictions and values. So, and I think it's important for us to look at it from those aspects, so we don't just get stuck in our Western of, just discussing, oh, the Democrats and the neocons are mad this happened, they're against Tucker, because that's what I've been seeing. But people aren't really talking about the underlayers of who Pezeshkian is, what he represents, and why people are mad. They're not mad about the Tucker doing it. They're mad about how Pezeshkian came across to them. So just kind of opening our eyes a bit to looking at things from not just a Western US based perspective. So yeah, they were all good points you brought up, Matt. I agree. Like, I can't say one way or the other, but I will say, like, I have my criticisms of Pezeshkian, obviously, but I don't think it's a bad thing that Tucker did an interview with a leader of Iran. I think that's needed for sure. So that's it, folks. I mean, that's it. We had a great show. We had a long show as usual. Matt, just let everybody know what you got coming up tomorrow or in the near future.
Yeah, so tomorrow on The Homeless Left, we'll be on at noon Pacific, 3 Eastern. And generally, we have Craig Pasa coming on, but right now he's taking that time off, as you guys know. He's doing well and putting health first, as we all should. So in the meantime, I think what we are going to do is we're going to have Fiorella. You're going to come on and do a little bit with us tomorrow, so that'll be awesome. Sure. So yeah, we have a few other things planned as well. And then next Tuesday's show, we're actually very excited. We booked Dr. Mary Talley-Bowden is coming on, which will be a very good opportunity to have that discussion, because we like to do conversations challenge big pharma, not just the Israel-U.S. war machine. So we do a number of topics on The Homeless Left. So you guys can check us out, Homeless Left on Rumble, and then also THL Presents on YouTube.
That sounds good. And yes, everybody go head over to THL Presents on YouTube. And for me, I have a Substack. I had an article recently released on the big, beautiful bill, which you guys should read. It's kind of detailed, to say the least. And then I have Friday, I'll have a podcast ready with Vanessa Beeley. So look into that. And yeah, that's all for now. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Thank you to Jayme for the behind the scenes stuff. I'm sure Jayme has a lot to say on everything. We didn't get to that, but next time, Jayme, and yeah, Pasta will get better and he'll be back soon. So thanks all for tuning in. Thanks for Matt for being here, and we'll see you next time on the TruthWire and Truth Out, of course.
Is there a lesson for you, for anyone else looking at this?
Well, he's dead. So, in general, you